I remember they were like, okay, so let's see a rehearsal, and they had like 80 background right there, and I was like, we're just gonna do the whole thing. And she was like, yeah, just let's go through the whole thing. He was like, Michael, I cannot tell you, everything was riding on that speech. Like the entire production, this multi-million-dollar movie is like, he's got to deliver the speech. Okay, here we go.
I've been so excited to do this with you, and I'll explain why.
Man.
First of all, I mean, we don't even really know each other ostensibly. I mean, we haven't really spent any time together. We have all these points of intersection.
Yeah.
We went to the same school. We're around the same age. I think you're a bit younger than I am. My partner has worked with you a number of times now, 3 times, 3 times, something like that. PJ?
At least.
And I've seen some of that work. So yeah, I've been really excited to talk to you because not only I'm a big fan, Michael, big fan. But beyond that, it's not about being a big fan. It's for some odd reason, for many years, you've been like a North Star for me in terms of how you've navigated the business, how you've grown as a performer, how you've reached out into different fields. It's kind of like you're living a vicarious life for a lot of us who feel like we've been on the single track for a long time, you know? And so just to educate the listeners, because this will be the first or the second episode, part of the reason I'm doing this podcast is I think it came about last year. I'm out here in the country now. We moved out to the country. So I spent a lot of time alone, wondering what the hell I'm doing with my life. What else could I do? What else am I interested in? You know, what am I curious about? And I realized that I've been curious about a hell of a lot of things, going down rabbit holes on YouTube, and I noticed that the thread though was always about people who've made shifts in their life, made shifts in what was priorities to them, made some movement, you know, forward movement. And so for me, you have always been someone who has never been content to stay in a place that was not fulfilling to them in all the ways that it needed to be. You've continually moved ahead, and I've kind of witnessed it from afar. And beyond that, you're just an incredibly supportive person. You've always reached out to me and other people who you are championing and want to keep the good vibes going and all that. And that's so important.
Yeah.
And, you know, for all those reasons, you've just been, you've been an important figure in my life, even though we have never spent more than maybe 10 minutes together. So it's so crazy. It's a weird, curious thing to me, but I'm really excited to talk to you. And I've immersed myself in all things Michael the last week, which has been really intense. You've got a huge presence online through all of your work, and not only your work as an actor, but as a professor, as an academic, as a dancer previously. So I want to get to all those things. Cool. You cut your hair?
I did. We could have a whole hour conversation around that. You know, it's funny. I was just thinking, the longest time that you and I have ever spent together was actually in a professional context of about probably like 5-6 hours, workshopping that play, the first play that I ever wrote.
A Soldier's Tale?
No, Nanutsuak. Diamond. You know that director, Diamond? Tom Diamond.
Yeah.
He was going to be the director of the play. And he said, I know this fantastic actor named Sean Doyle.
Oh, wow.
And he brought you in, and, you know, it's just this like sort of like, you know, this ragtag, you know, play workshop people. And you always had just the most incisive questions about like, who is this guy? The character you played was Liamine. And
I'm blown away now because so first of all, I had a major concussion 2 years ago.
Oh man.
And my memory is shot, and I honestly cannot remember any of this, which really makes me sad at the moment. But anyway, please continue with your story.
You probably would. I hadn't really. I was acting, but you probably never even heard of me by that point. And so then we did this workshop, and the play was never produced. I don't think it went beyond that initial workshop, but it was a fascinating moment. And that's when I became aware of you. And I've been following you. I'm a huge fan. I've been following you ever since. So we just spoke, very briefly, because you were an actor working on this thing and trying to figure out what the script was, and everyone had questions, and every time you read something that I wrote, it sounded better than it was on the page. And I was just like, this guy's incredible.
Bless you.
That's when we first connected. So weirdly, all these years later, all the the fact that we ran into each other doing Star Trek and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And TJ, it was weirdly the most time we ever spent together was 20 years ago.
And I don't remember a goddamn thing about it. That's terrible.
Perhaps it's not the most memorable play. Maybe I'll put it that way.
No, but I'm sure the experience was memorable. Did you do Big Love?
No.
No, I didn't think so. It came up in a search I did of you, but no, I knew that wasn't correct. So I'm not an intrepid journalist. I've done my best to kind of figure out what the hell we're going to talk about here, and I've seen a lot of interviews you've given. You're so eloquent, and people have asked you such great questions over the span of your work, particularly in the recent work and whatnot. So I just want to, I don't know, I just want to shoot the shit with you, and I want to start at the beginning and see a progression of curiosities in your life. I want to see how one thing led to another and how the thread of all those things still exists between them. So let's start at the beginning.
All right.
You're born in the Qu'Appelle Valley.
Yeah. 1967.
Right. So you are 1 year older than me. So now it's official.
It's official. Yeah, the Qu'Appelle Valley is this beautiful place in Saskatchewan. If you're driving along, it's pretty flat. Not a lot going on in terms of the landscape, and then all of a sudden the highway just drops down, and it drops down to this gorgeous, gorgeous valley. Balcarres, Qu'Appelle, all these little towns that run along the river. Weirdly, I have no memory of it as a kid, but I went back as a working actor, and I made this film in the area called Skipped Parts with Jennifer Jason Leigh, and just a little indie film. Drew Barrymore was in it. And I played a cowboy, and that was it was my first chance to return to that area.
How old were you when you went back there?
30. And I had a wonderful time connecting with that space. And so my memories of Qu'Appelle are from the movie Skip Parts.
Wow.
And, I learned to dance in, southern Saskatchewan. So all of that seems like always it's art, it's performance. That's always been the doorway into my personal sort of past, that history and culture, because the path I took was ballet, right? Classical ballet. That has nothing to do with being a Cree person.
So you started young, though, right? 6 or 7 or something like that.
I was 6 years old, and I liked it equally as much as hockey. It was just a fun thing to do. It's much later, when I was a teenager, that ballet as an art form became really interesting to me. But when you go to a place like the National Ballet School, then you've got these layers of teachers. There's
and you did that at what age, Michael?
I was
10. 10. Holy cow.
Yeah,
so you studied at the school for how long then?
10 years.
Wow. And your family moved to Toronto to be with you. And
yeah.
What was that like for your family to uproot themselves and come? Clearly it
completely
speaks to support.
Imagine moving to the moon, right? My family had created, my mom and dad had created a really stable life for us in Saskatchewan. My mom was a teacher at the very famous school in Saskatoon called the School for the Deaf. And my dad was a security guard with the University of Saskatchewan. and these were good jobs, and they loved their jobs, and they liked being in the city. And we were close to the reserves that they were from, and we were able to visit family a lot, but we were living in the city. And my mom was an educator, so she knew that education was was going to be a big deal to her and to my sister and I. And so we were in the city really to pursue those opportunities.
We'll get to this in more detail later, but your parents had gone through the residential school system, correct?
Yeah.
Both of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your ballet, your interest in doing it didn't come because of traditional Cree dancing or anything like that. It's just your sister did it and you went, hey, that seems cool.
Yeah.
So would it be fair to say then that your parents were really intent on trying to show you the world, trying to encourage you to pursue whatever you needed to, whatever you wanted to?
Yeah, they were very supportive, even though they knew nothing about the world of classical ballet. I think the teachers at the school explained to them, it's like, this is a young boy, and he has a lot of potential, and so we'd like to train him to see if he can move beyond this like talented kid with potential level, to see if he can master the form. And so they moved. They uprooted a successful, stable life for themselves, and they moved to Toronto. And we were living in this, condo, a little condo in Scarborough, and I'd commute every day to school. And they didn't have jobs. And then eventually, my mom got a job, and then my dad got a job, and these weren't the same, I would say, level of jobs that they had in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Toronto's an expensive place even then. And so it was an uprooting of their lives that they did on my behalf. And interestingly, they never moved back to Saskatchewan, even when I finished school. They had grown to appreciate and like what life was like for them, in Scarborough.
So when you were at ballet school, is there a particular point in time or something shifted in you that you were aware that dancing could lead to expression, to self-expression, to storytelling? Like, is there a time when that became a conscious thought for you while you were in school?
No, I don't think there was a moment. I think it's sort of this thing that you sort of become aware that you love doing. I wasn't exactly a favored child at that school. I kept growing, so I'm a tall guy, and when you grow, everything stretches. You're like a sort of a weak foal for a couple of months, and you fumble about. So I was injured a lot as a young teenager, and I'd be injured and recovering from those injuries, and then my classmates would sort of be progressing ahead of me. So I was sort of like lower tier where my technique was and my strength. So I'm what they call a late bloomer. And I was about 16, 17, and then I started to muscle up. I knew how to do the technique, and then all of a sudden I had the musculature and the tendon strength to keep it together, where I could continue training long enough. There was one moment, a friend of mine, like a classmate, he had to do an audition for a Canada Council grant that he was getting. So they said, we need volunteers of people who will take class with this guy.
Okay.
And so I was like, no pressure, right? Like, they weren't there to look at me.
Oh!
Where'd you go, Sean?
Hold that thought.
Hold that thought.
Okay, so that was my lights and camera falling to the ground. I'm going to take this opportunity to say, if you're enjoying the content, please give a thumbs up, give a like, give a rating, subscribe, follow, leave a comment. I really want to hear what you have to say. All of these things will help the algorithm push this out to more people, and I really need that as a fledgling channel. All right, thank you. Back to the show. Here I am.
You're back.
Going to use the layman's camera here. We're still recording. Rookie moves, rookie mistakes. There'll be many of them for me, I'm sure. That was one of them. Okay, so where were we?
So this guy had to do this class, and they couldn't make him do the class by himself. So I stepped in, and there was no pressure on me. The pressure was on him. The poor guy was shaking in his boots. You could see it. And the rest of us were just there to have a class and stretch our muscles and work on technique. And I had one of the best classes of my life. I was turning and jumping, and it was joyful. I had no pressure on me. And one of the jurors was Valerie Wilder, who was an artistic associate to Eric Brun, who was the artistic director of the National Ballet of Canada. And she was blown away, and she was like, who's this guy? Who's this, like a big guy that can move, and he's, you know, he looks strong, and there's joy in his dancing, and he's musical. So then they invited me to come and audition as an apprentice. And Eric Brun actually came to the class, and I was like, he's, you know, a legend in 20th century dance. So I was really nervous, and I remember I had a good class, and afterwards he was like, yeah, this is a good young dancer. Let's bring him into the company. And that's how I became an apprentice with the National Ballet of Canada. And I danced with the company in that capacity for about 2 years. And then they offered me a contract to join the Corps de Ballet, which is the sort of entry-level position. So I danced with the ballet company for 3 years as a Corps de Ballet member. And it was around that time that I simply needed a change. I needed to shift, you know, what I wanted from my life. I was becoming more and more interested in my own specific cultural history. And, you know, the idea of like wearing a powdered wig and like, you know, tights and like lacy things, I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I went to New York City. I joined the company of Elliott Feld, and I wanted to pursue contemporary dance, like movement that was like more challenging to me. And I got that. I needed a change, and I took a risk. I moved to New York City with $600 in my bank account.
But you were accepted into that company at that point?
I had a contract.
Yeah.
But you know, I needed that first paycheck bad, you know, because I was like burning through that money. And I danced with Elliott on and off for about 3 years.
Yeah.
And that was a life-changing act.
In terms of how? In terms of getting you connected with your own voice? Your
Yes. I think every artist has to know that they're legit at some point.
Yeah.
And they have to know it like on the inside. And it's not about acclaim. It's not about being legitimized by casting or, you know, someone shining you or something. You know, it's about doing something, and you intrinsically as an artist kind of go, okay, you know what? That wasn't shit.
I have something. This is me. This is actually me, and it's
this is me.
That's worth offering.
It wasn't luck.
Yeah,
I put this together, and so then you have a certain knowledge about your skill set, or about your approach, or something. Yeah. And so that's what happened at that company for me. I became certain of my ability. I was also introduced to performance where dancing was character. It's a character-based activity. And Elliott Feld was an incredible choreographer, but he was a great teacher. And he would say the most mind-blowing shit to us in rehearsal. So he would just say some stuff to us that would really make me think about what I'm doing and why movement or blocking or how, you know, how characters would relate to each other in this choreographic moment was actually part of something like a bigger storytelling idea. And then I busted my leg. I had an injury. I ended up being asked to come up to Wisconsin. I was in New York City and I came up to Wisconsin. I was on crutches, and I worked with a bunch of young high school students and a few professional actors, semi-professional actors in that area. And so I went up there, and I ended up hanging out with the actors, and, you know, we would go out afterwards after rehearsal and talk, and I'd be like, so what do you do? Like, tell me about what you do. And they talked to me about being an actor, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing
in my dance.
In dance. That's how this company works. That's how Elliott's choreography worked. And then that put something in my head. And I said, fuck it, I'm going to become an actor. Opportunity meets risk. I do all these weird gigs. Like I remember I did a South African play. One of my first big acting roles was in a South African play, because in South Africa they had this township theater, which is like highly political theater that
Mhm.
perform in the townships, and it was a way to skirt the censorship ban in apartheid. And these two South African guys came because the director was like, I've got this crazy idea that like the people from South Africa developed some of the mechanisms of apartheid in Canada, watching our school systems, watching the reserves, and they exported it to South
Yes.
Africa to build townships.
Yeah.
And so he said, what this idea where I get two Native actors and two South African Black actors, and we do one of the plays, and it was called Survival. So I would do all kinds of like weird, beautiful projects for, no money.
So let me ask you this: in the span of your learning and your growth, right up until now, do you have any sense of your balance between curiosity and fear? Curiosity, trepidation. I feel personally, and I think a lot of people feel fear holds us back. Fear. It's always playing the odds and figuring out what's the best move for the moment, as opposed to allowing your curiosity to carry you along. Do you ever have a sense of that, or what is that for you?
Ooh. Okay, I'll say something insane. I'm only curious, and I'm maybe not smart enough to be afraid.
Well, that's not true. No, but that's why we're talking, man. That's what
I
that's what
don't even think
resonates
about
from
it.
you.
I
Yeah.
don't even think about it because
Yeah.
I know that anything you do, if you just keep working it, if you just work it enough, it won't be embarrassing. If you actually, roll up your sleeves, get down on the floor, and, get a shovel and move shit
Mm,
around, that ultimately it'll be kind of cool no
yeah.
matter what it is, right? And so I've only ever pretty much said yes.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and so I'm always driven by curiosity. And so that's how I ended up doing like all these different things. Like that's how I ended up writing a play
Yeah.
about an Inuit space traveler,
Yeah.
that connected me with Lawrence. And it could have been a big disaster because that play never worked out. He had to give the money back for the grant because that's not what the money was for. But it didn't
Mhm.
matter because I created a relationship with him, and he sort of liked that I was like, a bit fearless about things.
Mhm.
And then the next thing we did was Pamutuin, which was the first Cree language opera ever, and was a
Mm.
huge success for his company, for me, for all the artists. And so,
You just
and
jumped in. Yeah, I'll do it.
I just jumped in. I'll do it. I'll do it. And so only dumb people jump into things that they realize that they don't have maybe the experience or skill set to do so. But that doesn't hold me back personally. I
I
always say
just think
yes.
I think that's rooted. First of all, clearly you're not a dumb person. Um, it's obviously rooted in something with how you saw the world through with your family, and whatever, by example, by their prisms through which they saw the world. Something just gave you permission to be fearless in that way. I
Yeah,
think maybe I had a bit
maybe.
of a different situation in my house, where it was all, even today my mom still says things like, well, Sean's doing pretty good, but Terry, my brother, he can build a good set of cabinets. It's there's a practicality that's really mixed with it's really about a survival, right? It's about
Right.
how to stay safe in the world. And so that's always been part of my emotional makeup, for
Yeah.
sure. So I've
Yeah.
never allowed myself to just be driven by curiosity, but that's what I want to do.
Mm.
That's why I'm
Mm.
talking to you right now. So you were acting, were you doing any TV and film then, or was it you were venturing into acting through theater, obviously?
Started in theater,
Yeah.
and I ended up, starting to go into the rooms. Right, I started to read for things,
Hmm.
CBC things, you know, different things. This is already post Dances with Wolves, post Last of the Mohicans,
Right.
post, War Party. There was like this impetus for, Indigenous stories on film, TV
Do you remember your
shows.
first audition?
Yeah, I think it was for this show called Medicine River. And I
Okay.
remember I knew in the audition, like I was like raw. I was like, I think I have to learn these lines that they sent me.
Mm.
I think I have to I got to memorize these things, and then I'm going to go in, and maybe they're going to ask for me to give the paper in so they can test me or something. I didn't know anything, right? And I did the audition. I was like, I think the character would kind of probably say it like this, and like no craft, just
Mm.
raw. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And I did it, and then the director was like, "Oh, that's good. That's good. So tell me, tell me about the character." Like I didn't know that he was going to ask me about the character. Like I didn't write the piece. Like,
It's a guy.
and he says these lines. Like
And he
I had
does this and
no
that. Yeah.
clue what to say. And then he
Mhm.
kind of looked at me. He's like, hmm. "Hey, well, it's really nice to meet you." Like I literally had nothing to say. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And then I walked out going, "Oh shit! Next time I'll know that probably they're going to ask me something about the character, so I'll have to do a little bit more work around that."
Mhm.
So I'd do a bunch of auditions like that where I'd make a terrible mistake and I'd go, "Oh, okay, I guess you're not supposed to do that." And and I'd sort of fumble about. And again, I didn't know what I was doing.
Mhm.
And then I auditioned for this one thing. It was a TV show. It was filming in the Southwest, and it was Geronimo was for Turner Network Television, and it
Mhm.
was auditioning for the part of a guy with a stutter.
Oh,
And
which
and
is a big challenge for any actor.
any actor.
Mhm.
So I'm in waiting in the hall, and there's a guy in ahead of me, and he's going like this, but and I was like,
Mhm.
that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know, I had grown up being around my mom that taught deaf kids, and so I
Mhm.
really knew. I was really familiar with the sound of people who talked when they were deaf and they didn't hear their own voices, and the people that talked with lots of challenges and difficulties and impediments.
Mhm.
And so I was like, no, well, that's not how they sound. They're trying to say something, but something they stumble, you know.
Mhm.
And I was like, that's those are the kids that I knew. And so I went in and I said the first line, and then the customer was like, okay, I'm just going to stop you here. I'm just, okay. I'm going to move this camera a little bit here. You're
Wow.
doing just, let's go again.
Mhm.
I got that part.
Mhm.
Later, I asked the producer, I have no real credits. I come out of ballet. Why did you guys hire me? And you were like, you were the only one that knew how to stutter properly.
Mhm.
Also, you look pretty good. I
Yeah,
was
you're
like, okay.
a good-looking guy too.
So I was like, oh, wow. Get your darn toe in the door, get your finger in the door,
Mhm.
get your nose in the door, and then learn
Mhm.
once you're in the room.
Were you happy with how once you started doing TV and film, because you had a lot of success relatively quickly once you got that foot in the door? Um, were you happy with? I mean, the larger question obviously is representation, and were you happy with where the industry was at that point, and if you felt like you could express truth through the roles you were given? But beyond that, were you happy with the fact that you were a beautiful young man who fit all these native tropes and like you were castable as anybody, and so how did that sit with you?
Well, you know what? It never hurts to get
No.
cast in something. Never hurts to book a job, right? Like you're
Never.
like,
Yep.
I booked the job. Like, so you have that universal joy.
Hmm.
Most of the time, it was absolutely fantastic,
Hmm.
even if the job wasn't that great. Because being a dancer and doing little theater gigs, like no one sent a car to pick me up to drive me to the airport. No one bought me a ticket to fly anywhere.
Yeah.
Here's something that would put me in my place real quick. I on that job, that Geronimo job. I
Hmm.
remember I went down And the actors were talking, and I was like super happy with like the money I was getting. I was there for like 4 weeks, and I was making close to minimum, but it was like $11,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard some actors overheard them talking, and the guy was like, "Oh yeah, this fucking job is, they're only paying me 14," and I was like, "I've been ripped off. I've been ripped off," and I was kind of like angry about it. And I was talking with my dad about it. I said, "Yeah, I'm only making $11,000," and my dad went, "That's what I made last year."
Oh, yeah.
And that so put me in my place so fast. I was like,
Yeah.
"Michael, you fucking asshole. Be so grateful for, my dad worked really hard. He was an older man, and he was working as a security guard, and he was working in this place where the sort of shipping area, and that was his job, because he didn't have an education, and it was manual labor. And I was reminded, I was like, oh yeah, there's people who are working really, really hard for nothing. So shut up and be so grateful that you could actually do something that's fun. And
Did that change your focus at all? Did it make you more serious, or were you just more grateful?
I was grateful because there's two parts of our business, right? There's the artistic part, and then there's the business part, and never the twain shall meet. You treat one you work it as a business, and then you have a different brain and you work it as an artist. I'm sure you've found sometimes the highest paying jobs were the worst ones.
Just the sewage. Yeah.
The
Just
worst ones.
the most miserable experiences.
The
Yeah.
most miserable, exactly. And then sometimes the ones where you made nothing.
I
Were the
remember
ones
doing.
you keep with you.
I remember doing a show series I was on. It was one of my earlier ones that had a lot of notoriety, and it was not a happy experience for me. The show, and it's unfortunate because the show was a success and everything, but I just, for a number of reasons, I just never felt like I belonged on that show. And I remember one day sitting there, and I did one scene on one day, and I waited around for all this time, and I came in and we shot the scene really quickly, and I worked out how much I was making per minute, right? And then, but then in my mind, I've got this ratio going between the amount I'm making per minute plus my level of abject despair and loneliness. And it made me understand exactly what you just said, that there's the artistic side and there's the business side, and you have to be able to have sanity with both halves, or you're just going to lose everything. You're going to lose your momentum. You're going to lose your mind.
Yeah. And my agent, who, by the way, my first agent is still my agent. You know, dear Mary
Amazing.
Jane, um, actually approached me at a party. I think it was a party in Toronto. I'd just come back from New York City.
Mm-hmm.
I told my girlfriend, I was like, I'm going to be an actor. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm at a party. She said, "You're a friend of Kent, right?" Kent's one of my best friends. Kent Mockman,
Mm-hmm.
great artist.
Oh, yeah.
And
He's a friend of yours? Does
yeah,
PJ know that?
I think she does. Kent
Oh,
was the best man at my wedding.
oh, wow.
So we go way back.
Mary.
And he was roommates with Mary Jane. And Mary Jane was like a young agent just coming in. And she comes up to me, at this party, down in Queen Street somewhere, like a little crappy place. And she says, "You're Michael, right? Kent's friend?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm Mary Jane. It's very nice to meet you. I understand you'd like to become an actor." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm really interested in pursuing acting." She goes, "Well, listen, I am a new agent, at Talent Works. I think that's what it was
Mm-hmm.
called.
Yeah, I remember that.
And she said, I'm not. I don't even work on commission because I'm so new. I'm still on salary, and I'm just starting, and you're just starting. Would you like to start with me and just figure things out together?" And I was like, "Sure."
Mm-hmm.
She's still my agent.
Amazing. The rest of us should be so lucky.
It's crazy, right? Like there's business, and then there's friendship, and we've managed to keep those two things separate for a long, as
Mm-hmm.
separate as they can be. and it's just worked out. I actually just let my agent go in the U.S. just a month or two ago.
Hmm.
Been
I'm
my
sure there's
agent
a
for
story behind that.
30
We'll get there.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huge risk, but I realized that friendship and business are not the same things.
No.
And I needed something else from
Mhm.
a U.S. agent.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm very lucky too because I still have my. It wasn't my first agent, but Jennifer at the characters, Jennifer Goldhar, her father. I was with her father, and then I ended up going with her, and I've been with her for 25 years too. But
Amazing.
again, it's about boundaries. It's about making sure you understand what's the friendship part and what's the business part.
Absolutely.
It's important. So when you were you kind of stepped back from acting at a certain point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The business fucked me over once, and I didn't like it.
What's that
And
story?
I auditioned for an HBO project called "Bury My Heart, Wounded Knee,"
Oh yeah.
and they wanted me to audition for this little side part because they
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent in an audition, and it was good. It was a good audition. Did it in a hotel room in Anadarko, Texas, or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
where I was at the time. The director saw it, and then I get a call 2 days later, okay, so we really liked the tape, and I was like,
Is it possible? I think it's
oh,
possible.
let me check my schedule. I'm wide open.
Mm-hmm.
So I sent in a tape. They liked the tape. They flew me in for a screen test. I do a good job. Mary Jane calls me, Michael. They loved it. You're the director's choice. You're the casting director's first choice. They're sending it to the execs, just for network approval. So, oh my God, my fingers are crossed, and get a call from the producer. Michael, incredible audition. So much texture. So much. It was so beautiful. We're not going to hire you. Another producer has another actor that we're going to hire. There's someone else he wants to work with. I was like,
And that was it.
oh, is that how it works? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, that was the
That's
first
a
moment.
hard lesson when that happens the first time. That's the real slap in
Oh,
the face.
and so then I was like, oh, I thought, I was like, oh, Michael, you dummy. You thought this was a meritocracy.
Yeah.
You thought this was just about art and skill and the right moment and the right actor and fate. Brother, you dummy. This is about power. It's about access.
Mm.
It's about, the actor that they ended up hiring was a lead actor in a series that producer was developing.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter
And
how
the
good my
sad part
audition
about
is.
no, yeah, exactly. And the sad part about this story, you know why it happened. But so many people, particularly young actors, they get in these situations and they never hear the story of why it happens. And they carry with them for years, I just wasn't good enough. I didn't do a good enough job. I wasn't right for the whatever their personal narrative is of it. But when in fact it has nothing to do with them at all.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like that's a world weary story that
yeah,
happens in our industry.
yeah.
So you fucked off then from Hollywood for a while, and is
Yes,
that when you started Signal Theater?
no, not quite yet. I started teaching. I had two young children, and I didn't want to be the dad that was not home.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was happening before, the HBO debacle.
Mm-hmm.
And I was already like, I'm not home a lot. My wife's alone a lot. And I'm in a hotel somewhere. I'm like traveling. And then we had children. And then I was like, my parents were there for me. I need to be there for my kids. So there was already pressure on me to not be on the road. And then that HBO thing, and at that point I'd gone back to school. I got my MFA. I'd been applying for some teaching positions. I got the York position.
So as an acting teacher at that point?
Yeah, I
Okay.
had actually started at York just the year prior. It was my first summer where that whole audition thing happened, and they were like, well, you're going to have to film all fall in, Alberta. And I was like, I just got this job. Am I going to just turn around to the department that, I've gotten this tenure track position? Like, what am I going to do? And I didn't get the part. So it was never a problem, for me to walk away from that job. And I'm so glad I didn't do that movie. Like, I can't tell you how glad I am that I didn't get that part, because I went back and I threw myself into being a professor. Signal theater followed, like a year or two later. There was a kind of like an 8-year period where I'd send in tapes. I would not get hired for anything. And so
during that period, prior to starting Signal Theater, or during that entire period?
During that entire period, I was doing both. Yeah. So that was when I became the actor that I think I am today. By being immersed. David Rotenberg was still at York. Really interesting teachers all around. Smuckler, everybody was there. I was learning from them. I was learning from students. I think, my first year there, Kristen Hager was like one of the students. So we had some superb students. You came out of that school, that program. I would learn more about acting day after day, week after week. And then I started directing. Then I started making theater. So I was in, if there's a master's program, this was the master's program. And
in terms of refining what you wanted to say too, right, in the work.
Yeah. At the end of that period, I'd already started to make theater works, like big full-length theater works.
Right.
And I think I'd already made Soldier's Tale.
Okay, so I would have met you prior to you starting Signals. I mean, I met you earlier, which I don't remember about.
Yeah.
But
it was Soldier's Tale, and
which was just a stunning piece of work.
Oh, thank you.
I have a lot of memories about that. Very vivid, very vivid. The bottle dance, and PJ, my partner, was in that.
Yeah, of course.
You did a number of iterations of it, though, did you not?
There was only the Toronto performance and then the NAC performance.
Oh, okay. I didn't see the NAC.
Only lived twice.
I want to ask you something, Michael, about.
Yep.
This is a quote you said at one point in an interview. One of your goals with the theater company was to create an intercultural working process. When you hire non-Indigenous performers, they come into intersection with our ways of knowing and performing. And in a way, we indigenize those artists to our protocol, our stories, and creative allies.
Yeah.
So, which I love. I love that, and I would love to be a willing subject in that experience. But one thing I find interesting with a lot of my Indigenous associates and friends, they often feel very frustrated and tired of having to teach the rest of us. And I say the rest of us, I actually have First Nations heritage. I don't know if you know that, Mi'kmaq. But I certainly did not go through the world knowing that. I only learned that after I played Johnny McDonald, which is the irony of ironies. And that's a whole other story. But can you speak to that? The idea that it's part of your mandate, at least when it comes to your theater work, to educate. Because I think a lot of Indigenous people feel like people need to fucking learn that themselves, and I don't want to have to do that for them.
Yeah.
It's not kindergarten class. And I can understand both sides of that.
Yeah. I'm an educator. I was raised, my mom was an educator. So the whole idea of teaching, and my dad was a wonderful teacher, even though he wasn't, an educator per se. I was taught by incredible teachers. I had incredible teachers at the ballet school. I had incredible teachers in Elliott Feld. I had incredible teachers at York, these great teachers. And the students were teaching me too. And so Yvette Nolan and I, we were, central, along with Brittany, we were Signal Theater. The three of us were Signal Theater. And
I didn't understand that Yvette was part of that.
Yeah. She was an essential component in Soldier's Tale, in Bearing. She was a co-director of Bearing. So I learned a lot about that idea of sharing.
Bearing, by the way, I should say, Bearing was an opera, a dance opera that you created, correct?
Yep,
For
yep,
Luminata Festival.
for Illuminato in 2017. So the idea that we indigenize artists ourselves and our processes in making theater is a really important one, and a lot of that comes from Yvette, because this is the idea that when you come inside a theatrical process, there is a product at the end of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And a Western way of thinking is that the show must go on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no matter what, there must be a product presented, right? There's a lot of issues around this. You know, the abusiveness of people in power, that you have to endure harassment, abuse, all kinds of stuff like that. That's part of that world. Creating toxic workplaces. And you know what? The show must go on because there's a show at the end of it. That all of that is connected to also overwork, like overworking yourself to the point of, your relationships are falling apart, your health is falling apart. There's all kinds of like really negative things that are associated with that model of theater making or entertainment, making. Yvette, myself, the artists that we work with, we started to realize that the point of theater was the process of making it. Mm-hmm. That the show is actually a secondary process, mm-hmm. because the process teaches more than the product teaches. We remember our processes much more than we remember products. I don't remember how much I made on some of the worst shows, but I remember the worst part, right? I don't remember how little I was paid on those great jobs, because I just remember the great part, the process, the beautiful part of it. So Indigenous processes are long-term processes. So actually, if I make a theater show and I create allies and people who think like me, ultimately, that's the better product. Mm-hmm. And that
long-term relationships.
Like we're actually building something. We're building an anti-colonial philosophy in mm-hmm. making work. So we always tried to make our processes as good as they could be, but it's obviously, this is a commercial venture, and so there's all these pressures, and not everyone had the greatest time on our shows, and there were lots of reasons for that, but ultimately what we hoped to do was that this process of collaboration, that the idea that we were a non-hierarchical space, would be a more important legacy of Signal Theater than any show we made.
Do you have a measurement or something of the impact that you can create with theater versus the impact you can create with film or television as a director, as a creator? Is that something you're aware of?
100%. It's a candle next to the sun.
Yeah.
And I mean, the reality of the ephemeral effect that someone can have watching a theater show is infinitely greater than mm-hmm. the effect someone can have watching a filmed entertainment. I remember we were in Ottawa. At the end of the show, there was a young girl weeping in the audience, and her friends were consoling her at the end of that show. And it's an intense show, right? It's about PTSD. Mm-hmm. And I doubt that person could have had the same visceral, physical effect from watching, 1917 or All Quiet on the Western Front or any show like that, right? So theater has film beat in impact. Film and TV have theater beat for reach.
Yeah.
Theater is a highly privileged, elitist, colonialist process. Coming to see a dance show, like mm-hmm. who the hell can afford to come see a dance show if you're like barely making it? You have to come to this theater. You have to, get a babysitter.
Ticket prices are so
$40
high.
or $300 for a
Mhm.
Broadway show or something.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you could have a little kid on the res watching Wild Indian on their
Mhm.
phone, right?
Yeah.
It's just or Blood Quantum or whatever, right?
I would say though, one of the, of course, I agree with you 100%. But when I think back of the films that I remember, or my first theater experiences that really had such impact on me, it's about being the confirmation of humanity when you watch a theater in a different way, because you're actually having particles, you're having energy collide, right? You're having a literal metaphysical experience with everybody, that you're the audience and the performers and everything, that I think that stays with you on such a deeper level and for such a longer time. Like, that's, for me as an artist, that's the thing that sustains me through all the shitty shows we were talking about or whatnot,
Right.
our attempts at storytelling. But when you're in a position to create and tell the stories, you have to be practical, and you have to figure out, I have something to say, and how do I get it out to the most people?
Yeah.
And so, do you feel now, having said that, do you feel that there's a difference for you in terms of your focus between TV and film? Because we're in such a different marketplace now, and everything's changing, and streaming, and the indie film is, on its last legs. I hope not, but it seems to be stumbling quite a bit at the moment. And
Mm.
so, where are you putting your focus?
In any and all. Okay, so here's what I think about streaming,
Hmm.
and we're in the middle of a second golden age of television,
Yeah,
um, where you've got the ability to create works like Chernobyl, which are
stunning.
like a
Hmm.
Mount Olympus of television kind of shit, right? Um, you have spectacles like Game of Thrones. Like, how can any one film compete with that kind of serialized storytelling?
Yeah,
However, everyone's cashing in, everyone's creating these incredible miniseries, limited run series. I've done a bunch, and there's countless streaming channels. I'm exhausted. I really want to watch Yellow Jackets
hmm
because I've heard such great things about it, and I'm like, oh
just not
man,
enough room. Yeah.
I can't. Like, how am
Hmm.
I going to figure out enough time to watch this one? I felt the same way about Mayor of Easttown. I'm like,
Hmm.
uh,
And the
how am I?
problem is that when you're trying to cram all that in and try, because there's so much to watch, you end up binge watching hours and hours over a weekend, and it doesn't sit in the same place because there's not enough time to assimilate it,
No,
right?
no,
So it is there's so much gold in there that's being lost because of the way that we're receiving it right now.
right, right. And so now I'm actually convinced that feature storytelling is going to return with a vengeance,
I hope so, brother.
um, because I like I'm scrolling, my eyes are almost bleeding, and I'm like,
Hmm.
Silo, Apple. I want to watch that. I don't have time, but do you know what I'm gonna watch? I'm gonna
Yeah.
watch a 2-hour movie, a 90-minute film on Netflix because I'm overwhelmed by
Hmm.
the number of things I could watch. You
Yeah.
know, oh yeah, I want to watch Beef with Steve Yen. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. Or that new Korean drama that looks
Hmm.
incredible. The Japanese thing. I'm exhausted.
But you know what I did? So I have this there on the screen. You see that? I've got a screen there. I've got a projector um,
Oh yeah, cool.
on the wall. So my strategy, which is has varying degrees of success so far, but I try to make this room, other than these interviews, I try to make this room the movie room. This is out in the studio in my backyard. So it's about coming and making an event. You know, you sit
Wow.
here, you've got a big screen, you've got good sound, and so it's not just watching something on your regular, which is already enormous, 36, 56-inch television screen, whatever. But if I need to make that effort in order to take in the sacredness of the experience of watching good film again, you know. And
Yeah.
I'm trying to get PJ to do it, but she's so goddamn busy. I can't even get her back here. And also, we would have to start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon because she's asleep soon as we start. So
I know.
she'll kill me
I
for saying
know.
that.
I know.
I want to talk to you about acting for a little bit, man. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours and hours here.
I hope we do.
Okay, let's go. Let's go to acting because we haven't really talked about the nuts and bolts of acting for you, because I think you're an extraordinary actor. And again, rewatching your work this week in certain things, just the range, the emotional range.
Oh, thank you.
See, this is where I said to Michael in an email I sent him, I'm so in awe of you, but I'm gonna really promise to pretend not to be in awe of you. This is a moment where I'm letting my awe get out and I'm getting kind of tongue tied. When you think of yourself as an actor, when you think of yourself expressing your identity. So I started to act as a form of expression because I was a lonely kid. I was an overweight kid. I didn't have the means to express myself socially.
Mm.
And I know a lot of people who started acting because they wanted to pretend or they wanted to step into to explore other people's lives, different worlds, different characters. For me, it was all about self-expression. And I think ultimately it still continues to be. Do you have a perspective on that for yourself?
I'm a pretty outgoing person. Like, I know there's all kinds of actors, so I don't need attention. Is basically what I'm saying. I don't need attention. That film roles could give a person. I've always been just trying to find the right parts, kind of like looking around. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm turning down parts left and right. I've been blessed to have like things land in my lap that are, and that I audition for and that I get, right? So I think what I've been able to do in the last probably 6-7 years is I've been able to curate by chance some really specific kinds of roles. Woman Walks Ahead was my first acting role in I hadn't acted in about 4 years or something like that.
Wow.
And then I walked into that film with Jessica Chastain and Sam Rockwell and Bill Camp, Kieran Hines, like people that I would watch regularly on screen and on television. I kind of knew right away something kind of hooks me, and I knew right away in the audition material that this was a guy filled with regret.
We should say that the film A Woman Walks Ahead is about a New York painter who heads west to take portraits of the various Indigenous leaders, including Sitting Bull, and pays Sitting Bull a shit ton of money to paint him. And they end up having a very profound relationship together all around the time that Sitting Bull is trying to get his people not to accept the treaty offers from the government. And he ends up getting killed when he's being arrested by the Indian police. And then very shortly after, Wounded Knee happened where all his followers got massacred, basically. Did I get that right?
Yeah. The broad strokes are exactly right. So he was a guy who, at the end of his life, he had also been in prison for 2 years.
Yes.
And he had also seen the might of the U.S. military at that point. He'd been to Washington. He'd been everywhere. And he said, we will be crushed. They're aching to kill us all. And he knew, he was always balanced on this edge. The Ghost Dance religion had just come up. Like, there was this huge movement to resist at all costs. And he said, they will ethnically cleanse this place of us. And so he was like, how do we live and fight, but not fight so much that we're wiped out? They're going to wipe us out. So he was a guy who was caught, and I got that right away from that speech. And also I just knew about that history. And I was like, I can't wait to play this guy. I can't wait to play his regret. And he's a really three-dimensionally, conceived character on the page. He was funny. He was wry. He was angry at times.
He was a smart ass. Yeah,
he was all of those things. He was hilarious.
I mean, the reality is that your performance in that is certainly award worthy. I mean, you easily, if had it been a different kind of film, somehow maybe obviously it would compromise the spirit of what you were trying to achieve. But if more people have seen it, or if it had a
Mhm.
bigger campaign, that movie, you would have won an Oscar for that.
Oh my God.
I
Thank
truly
you.
believe that. I truly believe that.
Oh wow. Thank you. Thank
Uh,
you.
the-
And and
and that's not hyperbole. Like, I would never say that. I've never said that to anybody in my fucking life, but I truly believe it. And this is so for me. There's something of it's the deep seated regret. It's the discipline of your performance, because it could be so many things. We often have a tendency, and this is probably something that's really crucial to your approach to these historical figures that you played, Crazy Horse as well. They're not victims, and through a colonial mindset, we could see them as victims, but that's certainly not any. I mean, he was a warrior, and he was fighting for something so specific at that moment. And with your permission, can I just say a few words from the beautiful speech? Do you
oh yeah,
mind?
yeah,
I,
go. I'd love to hear
I'm
it.
not going to act it. I'm just going to read it. So maybe you can set it up better than I can. There's a meeting between the government, who have come to try to get this treaty moving in a certain direction. Sitting Bull has come in to speak. Nobody wants Sitting. He wasn't invited,
Yeah.
but all the people are there, and there are other leaders there who are going to say, yes, we need to take this treaty, because yeah, they'll take our land, but we're going to get this food. They're going to take care of us. And then as you come in, they all go, I don't want to speak. No,
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
going to speak.
Yeah.
They all
Yeah.
just back
His
down.
presence shamed them into silence.
That's right. And so the general, what was the general's name?
General Crook.
General Crook. He basically allows you to speak, even though other people are suggesting he doesn't allow you. But ultimately, he wants you to speak, because you actually stir up the spirit of the people that needed to be stirred up, and they refuse to take the agreement.
Yeah.
But that ultimately sets up what he wanted to do anyway, which was to just go to war with you.
That's right. That's right.
So when you ask to speak and he lets you speak, Sitting Bull says, in this dust, there is the body of Crazy Horse, American Horse, Spotted Tail, Black Kettle, Sword, Two Wounds, Rain in the Face, and the wind blows our heroes in our faces. And of course, this is all in Lakota.
Yep.
Our diplomats, our doctors, our priests, our dead children. The Great Spirit speaks to us in clouds of dust. You cannot sell pieces of the earth, because the earth belongs to God. We must tell these people to go home, back to Washington, not hurt the earth anymore. Enough, enough. And then you pick up a handful of sand. We will give no more of our land away, not even this much. And you hold up one grain of sand. And that's enough to make everybody vote against the agreement.
That was extraordinary speech.
Yeah, yeah.
Just the
So
writing of it. The
yeah,
writing of it.
yes, but the discipline that you had when you were doing it is what makes it so compelling, because this is this is this is this is the life of all your people.
Yeah.
This is a summation, and you have another one later in the TV show, Rutherford Falls, you did too, which is also very impactful in the same way. But how did you choose to approach it emotionally? What was the emotional trajectory for you? What was your intention with the speech?
Well, the intention was it was a hinge scene, right? It was built like, if you just looked at the script, you realize that was a hinge scene, meaning it had to be so solid
Mhm.
that the whole movie could swing on it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's akin to the bar scene in Unforgiven when
Mhm.
Clint Eastwood, Bill Money comes, and he comes into the bar, and they talk about, like, this guy's a killer. This guy's a stone cold killer,
Mhm.
and the whole movie's about that. Then he comes in and he kills pretty much everyone in the bar, right?
Yeah.
And he does so with such efficiency and calculation, and like, you're like, the whole movie rests on his ability to do what he did in that bar as effortlessly as he did. So I realized the same thing was true for me as an actor in the scene. we had to believe that people could hang on his every word, that they could hang on the pauses, that they could hang on the inflection. He was a great orator. And I knew also that, like I would be standing in front of like this big crowd of people. So it was like it was theater, like all the theater stuff had to come into play. And I knew that the physical action of holding the speck of dust was like, that was the end piece of choreography. And, and said in the stage direction, he gathers up sand and he's holding it. And so I knew that he would start sitting, because I was like, no, he doesn't. He starts sitting, and he hates that guy. He hates that general. And, there's just such a, I had to deliver as much loathing, like the depths of my personal loathing had to be present in that look that I gave to him. So there was all these like things that I knew I had to like nail, but the biggest was the language. And I owe much of my success to Ben Blackbear, who was he's a language teacher, Lakota language teacher. He worked with me for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And I would be on the treadmill, I'd be on the bike with his voice in my ear. I drove myself insane learning that language. Because
the language of the film, or did you learn
Lakota.
basic? You learned the basics of Lakota.
No, I had to learn that speech phonetically.
Okay.
In Lakota. So I don't speak Lakota. So I had to remember la, 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 le, la, la, like in a sequence, because I don't understand the language, right?
Yeah.
I had to, it was just imagine you were taught to say 8, 6, 6, 2, 1. It was just numbers, right? Like it was notes that I had to, like a long song.
But it has to be supported with so much thought.
And so what Ben did was he coached me on the sounds. And then as a teacher, he taught me what. There's no one-to-one translation for English and Lakota. So he would teach me what the meaning of what a passage meant. And it wasn't the same thing as what you just read.
Yeah.
So it had a Lakota translation. So I actually spoke Lakota with the intentions inherent in that language.
Wow.
English listeners heard an English translation.
Yeah.
On top of it, but it was actually two different speeches. Like it was like quite similar, but quite different.
But you were thinking in Lakota.
I had to think in Lakota. Wow. I had to think in Lakota. So I remember the day, and my producer, a wonderful, wonderful man, Rick Solomon, he was like, he's talking, we just had dinner like, just a few weeks ago. And he was like, Michael, I cannot tell you, everything was riding on that speech. Like the entire production, this multi-million-dollar movie is like, he's got to deliver the speech, right? And I remember on the morning, I was prepared. I'm disciplined that way. Like I really know my lines. I remember they were like, okay, so let's see a rehearsal, and they had like 80 background right there. Bill Camp, Sam, Ruggle, Jessica, everybody's there. The director, Ben, my teacher, and Susanna, my great director. She was like, okay, well let's run through it and just have a look at your blocking. And I was like, we're just gonna do the whole thing. And she was like, yeah, just let's go through the whole thing. I was like, okay, here we go. 7 a.m. in the morning, and I'm about to just do the whole thing for the whole crew. Everyone's just watching.
Yeah.
Like my mouth was dry.
Like you have to just be Sitting Bull all of a sudden at 7 in the morning.
And so I went through. I went through it. And I finished, and I held up the speck of sand, and I looked him in the eye, and I was like, not even this much. And everyone clapped.
Oh, geez.
The whole place erupted in applause.
Which
And
can be good or bad. So how did it hit you?
I don't even remember it really.
Mhm.
I filmed that speech all day. We were interrupted by a massive firestorm, like a massive thunderstorm. We had to
Mhm.
like, it was like lightning. We couldn't film. So the entire day was halted, for a couple of hours.
Mm.
And then I came back and I was filming coverage and everything. I never told this story, but from the master, we had sand, right? Because it was like filming in this dirty
Yeah.
field, dirt filled field. After the rain, it was a hard
Mm.
packed mud.
Oh shit.
There was no sand, and I was like, this is the coverage. This is the moment where I'm like this, the
Yeah.
lens, and we had no sand. We had no fine dust, and the greensman came up to Suzanne and I was like, I saved a bag of dirt
Oh,
just in case,
wow.
and he spread that out just enough for me to do all that coverage. The coverage that's
Which
in the movie.
which is ultimately to also now in your body, from having done it all day, it's
Yeah,
such an
yeah.
important cues for you with your speech. Yeah.
The greensman saved the fucking movie.
See,
Like,
that's the magic too of what we do, right?
yeah.
Right there.
So we filmed it all day. I did that scene countless times.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, I remember when they brought me home, I took one step out of my van and I collapsed. I fell on the ground because I was like emotionally, I wasn't physically, I guess, yeah, physically
Mm-hmm.
so drained by the experience. I thought I just fell over, and they were like, "Are you
Mm-hmm.
okay?" I was like, "Oh my god, my leg gave out." So that's one of those moments, that day, and how it turned out in the film. It might be my purest acting moment.
Well, I was about to say that there's very few actors I feel who can say that they have something captured so purely and powerfully. And that's it's there's a lot of people who give great performances, but for everything to come together like that, technically,
Yeah,
have a good director who understands how to stage it, um, it's really really just an incredible moment, and it makes everything make a lot of sense.
yeah.
It makes
So
him make a lot of sense. It makes her relationship to him make sense. Everything. It's just
yeah,
beautiful.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of
Yeah.
that movie, and that to me was that was period work, right? It's possible that Woman Walks Ahead will be my last, major period project. Only the rarest projects will get me back into period roles.
Yeah, my question was, do you see a place for this anymore? That
I,
type
I
of
think
work.
I think I think there is. It's just maybe not for me. I was watching all the Oscar films. I was very lucky last year. I became part of the Academy, and
Hmm.
I had access to the Academy screeners finally on my app, right? My Academy app.
Mhm.
And I started watching all these movies, and all the films that were nominated were mostly contemporary films.
Mhm.
And I'm not an award chaser, but I would like access to good films and well-made films. And
Yeah.
these are lauded films. These are prestige projects. And I wasn't part of many prestige projects that year. I did some really interesting work, and I was like, why am I not after Wild Indian, why, and after Rutherford Falls, why am I not getting access to these movies that I'm watching that are really,
Mhm.
really good, and there's really good actors in them, and I'm pretty good, and I think I could do that. And then I looked, and I was like, none of these movies have people with long hair, and men with long hair, and I liked having long hair, and
Mhm.
I realized, I was like, oh, wait a second. If I was cast in any of those roles, there would have to be some reason why that detective, he's got long hair because whether or not I'm a native person as
Yeah.
that character or not, there'd have to be some
Mhm.
reason why the surgeon has a ponytail or braid.
Mhm.
Why? And I watched Top Gun Maverick. I was like, well, I'm not going to be in this movie
Yeah.
because it was a really amazing movie, and I was like, well, I'd just never be considered ever.
I love that moment in Wild Indian when you say to your business partner, "My hair. What do you think? Is it the right length? Is
You
this
know,
okay? Is it?"
you know, it's
And
true.
it's
We
like
have to
such
write that scene.
self-loathing
We had
involved
to
in that.
write that in because I had long hair. I was going to cut my hair. Like my first choice for Well Then would have been to cut my hair, but I was doing this Apple series
Oh,
called
okay.
Home Before Dark, and my character was already established with long hair. So uh, uh, Lyle, the writer and director, we had this big conversation, and I was like, I want to cut my hair, but I can't because of this other show I'm on. And so he wrote that scene
That's so ironic.
specifically for me to have long hair because I said, why would this guy's hiding his Indianness?
Yes.
He loathes his
Yes.
Indian self. He
Yeah.
loathes it.
Yeah.
And why would he have this identifier? So we had to like work our way to it, and then we
See,
realized actually he was so cynical that he grew his hair to
yeah,
access more
exactly. Yeah,
diversity hiring practices.
totally. Yeah,
He
to
was
play
so
the game.
vile. He was so
Yeah.
vile.
Yeah, that's interesting because for me that was one of the beautiful grace notes of the film, that scene, and also the interaction with the white guy who just doesn't have a fucking clue how to respond to it. Right? He doesn't understand on what level you're asking the question, and oh, that makes a lot of sense. But that was great, and your work in that film is just stunning as well. And talk about internal and tragic. It's a beautiful movie. It's a hard movie.
Yeah,
It's a
it's a
hard
tough one.
movie,
It's a tough one.
but again, a
That,
beautiful, beautiful movie.
again, I was so glad to do it. And that one was an offer. Lyle wrote it, and he sent me a letter, and he said, "I loved you in True Detective, and I loved you in Woman Walks Ahead. I would be honored if you read the script." I read the script. I called him. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
when do we start?"
When you did True Detective, just to jump around a bit, was that character described as Indigenous?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
It was. It was another. To me, that's another landmark role.
Oh, yeah.
To play Woodard, like
Mm-hmm.
Nick Pizzolatto is just incredible, a great writer, and he wrote Woodard. Much of the comments I've received, from my own community, is like that's like the most native dude ever, but it came from this white writer, right?
Yeah.
And I said the reason why he wrote it so well is that he wrote a guy with PTSD.
PTSD. Yep. I mean, for me, that's what really speaks to his experience and through the film and why he does the things he does.
Yeah, and his Indianness was like just not a part of writing, and that freed up his Pizzolatto. It was incidental, and but because of the way I looked, because of the way Woodard looked, it was about Indianness and PTSD as the identity that the scars that identity carries in a 1970s America, right? It all. So when the community would watch it, we'd be like, "Oh, that's I know so many Native guys just like that." But it's also soldiers would be like, "I know guys, that's me.
Yeah,
that was me after the war." So, like he nailed it. He every pause was in the script. I just read the lines.
That's stunning. I love the first season, and your season of that show was incredible. And you got to work with Mahershala, who I worked with very briefly on House of Cards. What a lovely talk about a man deserving of all his success on every level.
100%. The first time I did that scene, they were like, "Okay, so let's just film the scene." It was just like that moment, like, "Okay, let's action.
Let's go."
I did the scene. I finished with my head down like this. They're like, "Cut." They go moving in. They started moving the camera. He's like, "Okay, I want to change this light here." I looked across at me. Mahershala is staring right at me, and I shake his hand, and he shakes my hand. He doesn't say a word to me. He just shakes my hand, and he goes,
"When you know, you know. When you're right, you're right."
Yeah. So I was like, I think I'm gonna do it like that. I
think I found something. I think I'll stay in this ballpark.
Yeah, exactly.
And Blood Quantum, I confess to getting halfway through that because man, there's a lot of blood in that movie. That's the zombie thing isn't my taste, but you had so much fun in that role.
It was good. That was my ode to Jeff.
Yeah, it's a shame. Jeff Barnaby, the director, died sadly. Right?
Yep.
Passed away
this past year. He cancer took him.
It's too bad because he had two films, both of them, Blood Quantum and Rhymes for Young Ghouls, both of them just incredible films. Yeah. For a young filmmaker, he had such a future ahead of him.
They asked me to do a little bit for his memorial. Like they celebrated him month ago or so.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, because the way Jeff talked is the way Trailer talked. So I just listened to Jeff and be like, oh, yeah, okay.
Is that right?
Because I was having trouble like figuring it out. And then I was like, wait, just listen to Jeff. So whenever I would find my way into Trailer, it was by just thinking about Jeff and just thinking about the way he talked and the way he approached life and how he saw things.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I would do that, it's my small, meek imitation of this great artist. And that was my Trailer, and it turned out pretty good.
Well, I'm sad that I didn't get to meet that guy, much less work with him.
Yeah.
So what are you doing now? So you say you're not acting at the moment. You're directing now. You're out west directing what? Or can
I'm
you say?
directing season 2 of Acting Good. By the time this
Okay.
podcast comes out, it'll be all over the news, but I'm not supposed to say anything right now.
Okay. When is it going to be all over the news? Because who knows when this podcast is coming
out? Probably like by July.
July. Okay.
July or August, something like that. So
fabulous.
Yeah.
Enjoying that?
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. So proud of our first season, and so I'm directing the first block. So I'm directing 2 episodes, then I'm directing the last block, 2 episodes, and then I'm acting in it this year. I'm playing a guy I never get to play. I'm playing a low life scam artist named Cousin Leon. He's an ex-convict, con man, scammer. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this part. I can't even tell you.
That's good. You're excited about it again because you were stepping away from that a little bit again, it seems to me. Were you? Or?
No. I mean, I'm doing it all. I'm doing it all.
Do you want to direct more in general?
Yeah. I'm developing a lot of projects and I'm writing. So right now I'm halfway through a treatment for a project that I'm supposed to direct. Once the strike's over, we'll resume the WGA strike. We'll resume development. I'm also developing a feature that I'm going to write and direct. It's a horror film, and I'm super excited about that. So I'm writing, I'm directing, and I'm acting. I'm doing all of the above.
Scary, but exciting. But you're not fearful. You're just curious.
And these stories have to be told. I'm like there's something about all of these stories. I'm like, oh my God.
Do you look at it like I'm the only one that can do this? I'm the only one that can tell this story, or meaning it's so special to me that I feel like I'm the one to tell this. Not that I'm better than anybody else, or is it just I just want the experience of doing all these things at once?
Each thing is its own reward. Like writing is its own reward. What happens to that piece of writing after is, I think, sometimes not up to me.
Oh, I bet you're a great director. Or maybe you're terrible. I don't know. I'll wait. I'll reserve judgment.
I think I'm really good because I let the crew do their thing. I'm super calm.
Are you interested in the technical in terms of lens sizes and composition and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm my shot lists, like my DP and I, we compared our shot lists and they're pretty much the same. So I think about things visually, but I think my talent is working with actors. I'm sure. I love acting. I love working with actors. And I think my superpower is that I suggest blocking that help tell the story better and help them do their work better.
Yeah, blocking is everything. A great blocking makes all the difference in how a scene, what the meaning of a scene is. And I directed one thing. I've written a film, myself and Mark O'Brien. I don't know if you know Mark, but if you don't, I hope that you both end up meeting each other. I think you'd really get along. Terrific actor. And we wrote a film. We're still trying to get it made. We did a proof of concept. And as we shot it, people would come up to me and want to talk, between setups or whatever, and just shoot the shit. And I just I couldn't. I was like having an out of body experience where people were talking at me and I could see their mouths moving, but my mind is just like there's just such a level, a high level of performance required to be a director. You have to be
Oh, yeah.
operating on every cylinder to the best of your ability for a sustained period of time. I mean, it's the ultimate. I want to do more of it. I hope that I get a chance to do it.
Yeah, it's the most rewarding and most back-breaking,
Yeah.
mind-numbing,
Hmm.
mind-blowing
Mind bending. Yeah.
mind-bending. That's the word. It's the
Yeah.
most back-breaking, mind-bending experience I've ever had as an artist, being a
Hmm.
director on a film set, a TV set.
And if you succeed at it, though, it must be just the most
Oh,
extraordinary feeling.
it's so good when you get the shot and you get the
Yeah.
performance. It's like New Year's times a million.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would have wished I asked you after
No,
2 hours?
no. See, I just keep rolling. So now you got a two-parter. No, I'm just so glad we could connect. We
Yeah.
we're like satellites. Like I watch
Yeah.
you watch me.
Hmm.
PJ's in the middle. Like sometimes we cross
Yeah.
over and be like, "Hey, PJ, what's up? What's up?" Um,
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. In fact, on another thing, there's something you and I need to talk about job-wise, but we'll get to that another time.
That would
Something I'm
be dreamy.
developing that you'd be so fucking perfect for. So let's talk business later.
I think we could have a good time doing something, buddy.
100%.
But for me, it's and without again being too hyperbolic here, the fact that you're out there doing your thing is such an inspiration for me and for so many people. You're my North Star, man, and I have such admiration and respect and love for you. I have love for you, and again, this is the longest we've ever talked, but
I know.
hopefully
I
we'll
know.
talk longer in the future.
I'm humbled. Thank you very much.
And where
For
do you
being.
want to mention any social media handles? that people
Yeah,
can,
I'm on Twitter. I lost my blue tick, thank God. But I'm still on Instagram too,
Okay.
and I'll post there. And when I find out more about the podcast, I will amplify.
Okay, counting on that's the contract that we're signing right here.
All right, thank you, brother.
Thanks, buddy. Good luck shooting, and I look forward to next time we talk or see each other in person.
Absolutely, and big hugs to PJ. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, love you, man. See you.
Take care. I love you back. Bye.